All right, welcome back to Valuable Physical Education. Today we continue our interview with Jacob Delgado, physical education teacher. Um, Today he is going to be sharing with us about how he went about getting a physical education job, some of the things he did, some of the grittiness he showed in order to get that. So let's go ahead and cut right to the interview.
Why I think you're so interesting to chat with is you take someone like Coach Miles and I, like, we've been doing PE now for like 10, 12 years, and that's great. And one thing that I wanted to pick your brain about, two-part question is one, and honestly, go through it is people say in San Diego, it's the hardest job to get is a PE teacher. And I hear all these stories of like, this guy's got a master's or this lady, went to an Ivy League type of PE school, was a Division I athlete and an Olympian, and they cannot crack the code. And one thing that I found very interesting with you is you busted through right away at a pretty young age, and you got involved at Helix, and now you're a full-time teacher at Burbank Elementary at San Diego Unified. Do you have any advice for 23, 24-year-old kids, in a sense, young adults that don't maybe have the experience that Miles and I have, but they're up against us in interviews because you made it work? How'd you do it?
Um, so I did it by diversifying myself. I I knew that PE was going to be a tough job to get out the gate. It's like, okay, what can I do to make myself be different, stand out? Someone looks at my application or what I got going on, and be like, oh, that's unique. So I just got into working in education in any way that I could. I worked as an assistant in a charter school for a while. I worked at a school for special needs students to get acquainted with working with that student population and how IEPs work and 504 plans work, stuff that usually is kind of just briefly covered, but you don't get a lot of hands-on experience with. And in those positions, I made it a point to be like, hey, like, can you tell me what this is? Like, how do these work? What does it do for the student? What do the teachers have to be aware of? So that way I know in the future what I need, like where my responsibilities lie. And I felt like that helped me out a lot. And that's helped make me stand out when my application comes up across, a principal's or superintendent's desk.
Yeah, I mean that's great because I don't think 504s and IEPs those aren't addressed enough. I don't think as physical educators. I've been lucky at my charter school. We're usually involved in that process a little bit. They at least want us to come check in with those kids that have them, even if it doesn't affect our class. But yeah, I mean, I knew nothing about those after already having taught for 4 years and coming into this new school, and so that's great. What was it like? Working with kind of an adapted PE situation when that wasn't necessarily your specialty? Because I know that's something that I enjoyed in my student teaching, but I never really looked at that avenue without having that credential. So I think that's a really cool experience you had. Can you give us a little more info about how that went?
Yeah, and quite honestly, it wasn't something I had ever seen myself doing either. The opportunity just kind of presented itself to me, and I looked at it like, okay, this is about a time where I can move on and do something different, and kind of give myself an experience that is different. It's going to challenge me, and it taught me a lot about working with that population, that student population, and how to differentiate instruction based on the independent needs of the students, as well as it taught me a lot about myself, like um, how to prepare for different scenarios, how to really plan for uh, X, Y, and Z in the lesson plan to go wrong, and looking more at the developmental aspect of PE rather than the proficiency and skills. The expectation is no longer all right, we need you to be able to shoot free throws at 80%, or we need you to be able to do a running layup 75% correctness. It's like, okay, we just need you to bounce the ball 10 times with one hand without losing control of the ball, and kind of taking things and breaking them down as small as they can go. It's something that I had never thought about before in working with students. And quite honestly, I feel like that prepared me most for working with elementary students, was working with in an APE setting.
Yeah, coach. I mean, that's great experience. And earlier on previous podcast, Coach Miles talked about the book and Angelo Duckworth about grit. And for all you viewers that are in college right now, considering being PE teachers, I think you gave them some outstanding advice, because basically you're saying, I was gritty, that's what you were. You were gritty, and then you diversified your field of work. You're like, because to be honest, it is what it is, but I don't have a ton of experience in adaptive physical education. And bam, right there, you could put that on a resume or talk to a principal, and that's just truth. And we all are unique, and we have our own styles, and we have our own flavor that we can bring to the table. But I think that's like sound advice for future PE teachers that are listening. I mean, sometimes it's not about the shiny masters, although we all three have one and it's great. And sometimes it's not about being a Division I athlete, which like I was and you were, but it's about getting in the field and getting after it and getting experience. And you clearly did it. If you were to give advice to maybe a freshman or sophomore in college right now that were to take those courses that you talked about that had an impact, what would you tell them? Like, this is what you definitely want to get out of this course? Because sadly, I see so many college students focused on being in fraternities and not really focused on the academics. And then when it comes later in life, they can learn a lot from those classes. What would you tell those students? Like, hey, make sure in this class, focus on this so it will help you get a job when you're 23, 24.
Yeah. What I would tell those students who are just like starting out is really think about, like, take a deeper look into yourself to start. Like, why am I doing this? Why do I want to go into teaching? And usually for most of us, it's because we care. We want to see people get better and develop. So once you understand that, it's like, okay, now say for instance, the lesson planning class I referred to earlier. How can I construct a lesson plan that's multifaceted and can cover different scenarios where X, Y, and Z can go wrong, but also take into consideration how I'm engaging with those students. How am I making those students PE better? How am I making their day better? What impact am I having on them? What attitude am I bringing? Bring a positive. This is something I preach a lot in my classes already, is come to class with a positive attitude and have a positive behavior, and we're going to have a good time. So if you approach that class or any class where you're working on teaching and you're having hands-on experience, have a positive attitude. Don't worry about things going wrong. Kind of plan for that to happen, but just know that you're there to help those kids get better. And if they're better at the end of the day than they were at the beginning of the day, that's a win.
That's really sound advice for students who are in college, because I mean, I think back on some of my college courses, and I had great professors. I mean, I had some of the same ones Kevin did, but a lot of it was focused on, how do you grade them? How do you break down these different skills? How do you, how do you build a lesson? How do you build a unit? And, you kind of forget that, well, you're actually, you really are there to make an impact on those students. So that's great advice. That, again, at the end of the day, PE does end up kind of sometimes, for better or for worse, getting dubbed, the fun class. But it should be. I mean, especially in San Diego, you're outside, you're moving around.
Mhm.
You usually get a time to interact with the people. So that's great advice. Again, they are tiny humans that are, needing some fun time in the day as well as their academic time.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I think today's interview this portion of the interview was really, I think it's really valuable for people out there who are searching for a job. I think it just shows that, grittiness and willingness to do things that maybe are a little bit outside of your comfort zone can be really valuable in experience, and it looks good on a resume. We can all try and search for our dream job, but sometimes we need to be able to, take a part-time job. Maybe we need to do some extra duties at a job that we don't necessarily want to do in order to get, good standing so that we can get a good, recommendation down the road the next time. And so, this is where Jacob's grittiness really came through for him, in taking some jobs that maybe he didn't necessarily want to take those. Maybe when he first saw him and he interviewed for him, it was just kind of going to be practice. But then when he got offered them and he didn't have other things coming on, he went for it. And again, that experience helped him. It helped him grow. And so I think that's a really valuable lesson for everybody out there who's searching, no matter what your age is or your experience level. You really got to just be willing to get out there. And sometimes, take something that maybe is a little bit outside your comfort zone in order to grow from it. With that being said, tomorrow, Jacob gets into some of his curriculum. Coach Delgado talks about how he's used Zoom for his PE classes. And, I think it's another valuable portion of learning how, kind of a newer teacher who hasn't been at this a long time is diving into curriculum. And especially, in a year where, things are kind of flipped upside down a little bit, and how he's been able to utilize Zoom and be the best PE teacher he can be during this time. So come back tomorrow, hear a little bit more about curriculum and using Zoom for your physical education classes. Thank you for watching Valuable Physical Education. I want to thank our sponsor, One Stone Apparel. They do great physical education clothes. They made us this great polo for valuable coaching. And they do awesome vocabulary tees. Perfect for physical education. They got great words on the back. You can customize them. Great artwork. Easy to work with. Dave at One Stone Apparel. Check them out, onestoneapparel.com.